What's up guys, Josh from Extreme Truck and Auto. Today we're gonna be doing a 2-inch rough country lift to this Toyota 4Runner as well as a differential drop. It's not like as extreme as a 4-inch diff drop, but what it does is it's these two like little inch spacers that go under the front portion of the diff and help drop it down. So your CV axles and everything are at a better geometry. So let's go ahead and get into this install. Got the wheels and tires pulled off this thing. What we're gonna be doing on this is first thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna sneak under here and I'm gonna mark the cam bolts with a paint pen. What that does is it allows me to know exactly where the cam bolts were and put it back so that way it's close to being in spec. It's not gonna be exactly in spec because we're putting a 2-inch lift on it, but it's gonna be close enough to where we can drive it to alignment safely. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the strut. This is a really easy process. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to undo this bolt here. That's the bottom strut bolt. Then we're gonna undo these two here. That allows the knuckle to come free. You're gonna take off basically the lower ball joint. And then we're gonna loosen the cam bolts. That'll allow kind of the control arm to swing out of the way. Up here, we undo the top strut bolts, it drops out. Like I said, really easy to take all this suspension and everything apart. So one thing I did forget to mention is to make life a little bit easier, we're gonna pull this skid plate. It's a 12 millimeter. I believe there's 4 or 5 of them up under here. I know there's 2 there, 2 there. And then we got a couple 10 mils as well. And this Christmas tree, which is probably gonna break, I've got replacements. I don't know why Toyota used that design there, but they did, so we'll just deal with it. Once we get that out of the way, that'll give us access to the nut that's on the backside. You can sneak a wrench up in here. I like using an impact to loosen it. It just makes life a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. We're gonna get back to doing this install. So what we're gonna be sticking in this is this strut right here. It is Rough Country's 2-inch lift strut. We'll get this stuck in and we'll move on to the other side, get that side knocked out. So one thing I do want to make mention of is when you guys go to put these basically ball joint bolts back in, right here on the knuckle, one thing you want to make sure you do is Loctite these bolts. It is very important to do that. I have seen it. Personally, I've never done it because I've always Loctite them, but I have seen it to where these work their way back out. So you want to make sure you torque these to spec and put Loctite on them. We got our struts thrown in, quick, simple, really straightforward on these Toyotas. That's one thing I really like about them. Our next thing that we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be installing the differential drop. It's that bolt and that bolt, 19 on the top, I believe a 22 on the bottom. You pull the bolts out. You wanna support the differential, but since we have the skid plate right here, it'll sit on there, so I won't run into any issues of it dropping too far. But what we're gonna install in there is the ReadyLift diff spacer kit. It comes with the aluminum spacer that's about 1 inch, and then your skid plate spacers and longer bolts. Now these don't come with nuts because one thing I really like about ReadyLift is they thread this to the same thread pitch as what's on the factory. So I'll get this thrown in, I'll bring you guys back and we'll move on to the rear of the vehicle. So one thing I did forget to mention is on the bottom of the differential right here is a big washer for the rubber bushing. Just make sure when you go to install it, you slide that back onto the bolt before you install it, and that's it. You're good to go after that. Got our diff spacers installed. We got to throw the skid plate on with the skid plate spacers that are over here. And then we're moving on to the rear. This can also save you money on CV axles or even a diff repair. So yes, I do recommend doing this for, you know, maybe 20, 30 minutes worth of work. If you're doing it with hand tools, it is well worth the money. All right, moving on to the rear. We're gonna be pulling the shock and the sway bar in link. What that's gonna be allowing us to do is to drop the axle far enough to get the factory springs out, because we got a new set of springs sitting down here in the box. And then one thing I like to do is loosen the track bar bolts on both ends. One, it allows the axle to drop just a little bit further. Do be mindful of any ABS wire, brake lines, anything like that that's going to the rear axle, because you don't want to stretch them, break them, etc. Another thing it does is it allows the bushings to reset. So I'm actually going to wait to tighten the track bar bushings until the vehicle is on the ground and at ride height. So that way you're not putting the bushings in a bind and causing them to wear out sooner. Same thing with the lower control arms and the shock bushing on the front. I have them still a little bit loose, so that way when we set everything down, I'll crawl under it, we'll get it all snugged up, and it'll keep those bushings from wearing out. I do want to make the point of that you want to tighten everything at ride height that has a rubber bushing, so that way it is technically relaxed when you're at that ride height position. Rear springs are thrown in. If you guys have a buddy or something, you're doing this on the ground, you can kind of stand on the axle and help press it down, so that way you can get these springs slid in. I use a bottle jack, and like I said, watch your brake lines and ABS lines to make sure you're not overstretching them or gonna cause a problem down the road. All we need to do now is install the shocks and the sway bar in link, and this lift is complete. I'm gonna get that done, throw the wheels and tires on it, and get this bad boy to alignment. If you guys have any questions or comments, make sure you post them down below. Like always, make sure you're liking the videos and you're subscribed, and I will catch you guys on the next one.